Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and I read 9 books in the latter half of July. It was definitely a better half of the reading month than the first half, because if you remember, the first half was kind of bad. But anyway, I'm just gonna get into it. I'm not gonna discuss too much of what each book is about, just because I have so many here to show you. But anyway, the first one that I finished this month, and one of the best ones, is Arabella of Mars by David D. Levine. I definitely had thought that I would love this book, and I definitely did really like it a lot. This has sort of been compared to like Hornblower in Space, and obviously if you know that I'm a Hornblower fan, you can pretty much predict that I liked this book. So this is about a girl named Arabella who lived on Mars and was raised on Mars and then goes back to England and whatever, and then because like her mother thinks it's too improper to be on Mars, I don't know, but her father and her brother are still on Mars, and then she finds out that her father died, and then her cousin is off to like go and murder her brother, so she basically has to just go and like find passage to Mars as like a sailor-ish person, all that stuff. So it's definitely a really, really awesome story, and I really am excited to continue with the series. Next, I read The Stars Are Legion by Cameron Hurley, and this is a book that I was really, really excited to read, and it ended up just being like good-ish, kind of, but basically this book takes place in an all-female society, and the people kind of just like give birth spontaneously, whether it's necessarily to a child or to something else that the society needs. So that whole concept of like a society where only women are there, sounded a lot cooler in theory than it actually was in this book. So in general, it just was a little bit boring, and I did really enjoy the fact that, you know, there are women who get together and women who betray the women they love and then like have to do something else and blah blah blah. And so I definitely enjoyed a lot of this book, but at the same time I was very I just thought it was kind of okay, or like good-ish. I wasn't super attached to it or anything. And next I read Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. This is a new YA release that I absolutely loved. This is about a girl who pretends to be her brother so that she can compete to be the tailor to the emperor. And so she has to sew some like really crazy things. And the person that she's sewing the things for is actually the character who I enjoyed most in this book. She was like a badass lady who's this terrible person, and I really enjoyed her. I think she kind of made the book. But overall, I think that the rest of the book, like, there was a lot of stuff with the magic system that just didn't quite get explained, and a lot of it felt very convenient. And then also the while the romantic aspect of it was pretty good, it went from like a super slow burn to like bam, it's there, and it was just way too weird. It felt a little bit contrived and not entirely, I don't know. Overall, I did really enjoy that book, and I definitely highly recommend it. Next, Descending by Dorothy Dreyer. I was really excited to read this, but it ended up being kind of a letdown. I mean, for one thing, it was really boring, and then for another thing, it's very Japanese inspired in that way that like a white author just kind of doesn't get cool enough with, whereas I think that like in the hands of a Japanese author, it would have been a lot cooler. They would have been able to do a lot more creative stuff with it, but in the hands of a white author, it just seemed very afterthought in a lot of ways. So I think that a lot of that could have been done better. And then also, this is a book in which homophobia exists and people are punished for homosexuality like by death, and it's kind of terrible because nobody wants to read that shit anymore. The other tremendous letdown of the reading rush was The Soul Keepers by Devin Taylor, and this is just the kind of book that it just had no point at all. So sometimes, you know, if I'm not the intended audience of a book, like if it seems more like lower YA or middle grade, I can at least appreciate the concept. Like Percy Jackson. I'm not a fan of Percy Jackson because it came out way too late for me to like it. I was already like in college or something when it came out, so I didn't enjoy it at all when I read it, but I thought the concept was brilliant. I would have loved it when I was a kid. But this was like literally just the most boring shit, and it made no sense, and it was just hella dumb, like 110%. Like it just didn't even, it had so much potential and it just did not deliver at all. However, what goes down must always come up, hopefully, and so I absolutely loved Alphabet of Thorn by Patricia A. McKillop, not Matricia A. McKillop, no. So anyway, this is a really insane story that's about a bunch of different things. It's ridiculous, and I absolutely love this author's like tendency to get super weird with the world building. Like, she just goes all out. And so this actually has several different plots going on, kind of. I literally don't even know how to explain this book, and I think that's just as well, because you should honestly just like pick up this book not knowing what it's about and just be blown away by the weirdness. Live and Let Die by Ian Fleming. This is, of course, a James Bond novel, and probably not one of my favorite ones, I would say. It's still really good, and it definitely has that whole element of like, oh yeah, right, a dude punching a shark in the face, come on. So I definitely enjoyed that aspect, because only, you know, not all of the James Bond books really retain that from the movies. I mean, of course, they came before the movies, but mostly the movies build on that kind of like, oh sure, like that's really a scenario that would happen type of thing. So they almost mess with you a little bit more humor-wise. And so I feel like this book kind of had more of that going on in it, but I do think that there was some insensitive commentary throughout the entire thing regarding Black people. Like, you know, people would be described as having like, oh, their nose was very negroid or whatever, and like the word negroid kept coming up, and I'm just like, dude, what even is that? Like, come on. But anyway, so I did really enjoy this book. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I think it's not, I think I would start with some of the other James Bond books, but I definitely still think this one is worth the read. I can't talk today. The Language of Fire by Stephanie Hemphill. This is a Joan of Arc reimagining type of deal. It's not really a retelling because it is basically Joan of Arc, but slightly different. So it is told in verse, and it's a super quick read, and it's really good. But while I enjoyed this book, it didn't really have anything profound to like add to anything. So it was very just, this is the story, there you go. And it didn't really like pull at your heartstrings, punch you in the gut or anything like that, really. It's kind of just like, here are the facts, there you go. And so I kind of expected a little bit more than what we got in this, but overall I do still think it's a very informative story that I would definitely say is worth a read. And finally, Some of My Best Friends Are Human by Liz J. Anderson. I really enjoyed this book. This is about four kids, teenagers, whatever they are, basically, and three of them are human, one's a half human, half alien, basically, and they are essentially at this school/orphanage type place. And then they decide to escape, and it's awesome. So I love the world building in this. It's so well thought out, and the characters are pretty rad as well. I kind of wish that we had gotten the points of views of all four characters instead of just like having it all be told by one of them. I think that would have added to the story a lot, but overall I really enjoyed this book for sure. And so those are the books that I read in the second half of July. There were a lot of them, obviously. So anyway, let me know if you've read any of these books and what your favorite thing that you read in the month of July was, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!